Welcome to another episode of the Vegan Pulse. I am your host, Nancy Arenas. My guest today has a passion for nutrition. He is Gabriel Gaarden, a registered dietitian and a graduate of UNM, University of New Mexico. He graduated with a master's in public health. Stick around, I'd like to introduce him to you. Hi, Gabriel. Nice to see you.
Hi, Nancy. Wonderful to be with you.
I miss seeing you out with this COVID thing going on.
Yes, it's been so difficult not to be able to get together with all of our wonderful vegan community and plant-based friends, and then of course just people in general.
Yes. So tell me, Gabriel, how did you come to veganism?
Excuse me. Well, it was about 7 years ago, back in the summer of 2013. For a while, I think we had here at my house on our Netflix queue, we had the Forks Over Knives documentary sitting there. And, we'll occasionally go into the queue, check out what's in there. And one day, it wasn't actually Forks Over Knives, but it was a companion documentary that the team also made called Forks Over Knives, the Extended Interviews. And so that, the Forks Over Knives documentary talks all about plant-based nutrition, and it specifically uses a number of case studies where it follows a number of people who've been struggling with either, severe like type 2 diabetes, heart disease, diseases like that, common chronic diseases, and shows kind of the reversal that takes place in their health when they adopt a whole food plant-based diet. This companion documentary that I ended up seeing first is called Forks Over Knives, the Extended Interviews, and they just sit down with a lot of these plant-based pioneer doctors, Neil Bernard, John McDougall, Caldwell Esselstyn Jr., T. Colin Campbell, and Doug Lyle, Alan Goldhammer, and they just drill them with all these great questions. Tell me about dairy, tell me about plant-based, tell me what's the most healthy, tell me how, what's the most effective way to treat or even reverse diseases like type 2 diabetes and heart disease. And these doctors or PhDs just answer all these questions. And that for me, it just hit me so powerfully. I said, wow, this is awesome. And I was just in the right place and time in my life where I was open to taking in that information and not being defensive, saying, well, no, I think you really do need meat or eggs or dairy, and this is why. And I'm going to kind of, dig down into my trench, and I'm going to just create excuses or try to rationalize why I shouldn't change the way that I eat. Instead, I said, no, this really makes sense. And these doctors have been doing this for decades after decades, and they have this breadth of research to demonstrate that this way of eating and living is legitimate and is best for the human body. And so I just immediately overnight, I had still been eating meat, dairy, and eggs. And I said, I'm going to give up those foods because I had long had a passion for human health and athletic performance. And so I wanted to see what kind of impact it would have on my overall health. And so I adopted a whole food plant-based vegan diet overnight. Actually, about a week later, we had a bunch of cans of tuna in the pantry. My parents and I, one night a week or so would just make a big salad, and then we'd split a can of tuna 3 ways. And so one night we split a can of tuna 3 ways, and I had seen the documentary with my dad the first time. And then I told my mom, hey mom, you really got to check out this documentary. So I sat down a second time with her. We watched it again. And then ever since then, I've never returned to eating, any kind of animal products. That was 7 years ago. And I also didn't mention that I had suffered for some really bad chronic digestive issues for years, and had tried different ways of eating, had tried to improve my nutrition over the years, but nothing had really seemed to get me to reaching that state of dynamic health that I really, sought. And after adopting a whole food plant-based diet, I completely reversed all of those chronic digestive issues. And so that, of course, was a great motivator for me to stick with this way of eating and this lifestyle, because I felt better than I had my entire life.
And I can sympathize with that, because I also, after I went vegan, I lost my fibromyalgia, bursitis. So I know that changing our diet is just so good for us. Now tell us, what kind of foods should we be eating to promote our health?
Wonderful question. And then the other thing I didn't mention, I guess, was that after adopting a whole food plant-based vegan diet, I was so enthused and so passionate and so excited to take that information and use it to hopefully make the world a better place that I decided to go back to school. I already had a degree from the University of New Mexico. Went back to school to study nutrition and dietetics, took 3.5 years to get my degree in nutrition, spent another year in my dietetic internship so that I could take the national exam and become a registered dietitian. And then I just completed my master's in public health at UNM. And I'm planning to use the culmination of all that experience and expertise for the rest of my life to promote this way of living and hopefully, make the world better and a healthier place in the process, to do my little part in that equation. And so, yes, the foods that we should be eating. Well, there's I can list them all real quick.
Yes.
More vegetables, fruits, and these are all whole plant foods. The foods that we want to eat more of are whole plant foods: vegetables, fruits, whole intact grains, legumes, which are split peas, chickpeas, lentils, and beans, any kind of beans. Those are all your legumes. Mushrooms, super important. They're their own category because they're not from the plant kingdom. They're fungi. Nuts, seeds, herbs, and spices. And so those, I think that's 9 different foods, all plant foods except for mushrooms. We want to pack as many of those into our diets as we possibly can. There's a wonderful app that you can download on iOS or Android. It's called The Daily Dozen. It's from an incredible pioneering doctor that started the organization called nutritionfacts.org. You can download it on your phone, and it has it's a dozen different foods and or drinks that are proven to be incredibly beneficial for our health. And so he says, we want to get up to or more, in cases where your calorie needs are higher and you need more food, but up to like 3 servings, 3 1/2 cup servings of legumes per day. And then several servings of dark leafy greens and other kinds of vegetables. And so it lists it all out there. And the wonderful thing about the app is you can just take it and, I had a 1/2 cup of blueberries with my oatmeal in the morning. So I checked that I had my berries for the day. And I had, for lunch, I made a salad, and I had, a cup or 2 cups of dark leafy greens. So I can check off that I had my leafy greens for the day. And so that's a really easy, super easy way to help us familiarize ourselves with the foods that we should be eating on a daily basis. And then it'll prevent us from forgetting, because it's right there on the app, and you can literally just, hit the little check boxes whenever, and it's kind of a fun game. You can just see how many things you get in a day. But don't get down on yourself if there's a number of foods at the end of the day that you haven't fulfilled, because any change, any small change, whether it's just adding 1/2 cup of blueberries to what we've already eaten for the last 20 or 30 years of our lives, adding 1/2 cup of blueberries is going to make a big difference in your overall health. So just celebrate the wins and don't get down on yourself or feel guilty for the things that you still may need to improve.
That is awesome. I do have that app. I did download it, but I haven't used it, I have to confess.
I don't use it either. I never downloaded it because I just feel like I have enough of a routine, and I just pretty much exclusively eat whole plant foods. But that's a great tool for people who aren't familiar with this way of eating. It'll help remind you about those different food groups that we want to incorporate consistently on a daily basis.
And that's the reason why I did download it, but I don't use it because I'm working with plant-based, rice, legumes, and nuts, and all that kind of stuff. So, but now that you said it, though, it is kind of a cool thing to just keep track. So maybe I will start using it. Tell me a little bit about supplements.
Supplements, great question, Nancy. So supplements, they're a double-edged sword. They're an important tool that we can use to help and promote and maintain our health, and then in certain cases, of course, get back to health if we're dealing with certain kinds of illness. But they shouldn't be used as a catch-all for, it doesn't really matter that much what I eat because I can just take a supplement and then I'm going to make sure that I get, whatever my body needs if I just take my vitamin or whatever other supplements that I bought. It's very important for people to know that whole foods, food as grown, as we find it in nature, they are going to be the best most effective, and safest packages to bring nutrients into our bodies, okay? Because those are the foods that we've evolved eating over the past millions of years. And so our bodies know how to deal with the nutrients when they come in those packages. When we synthetically or otherwise pack huge amounts, we concentrate huge amounts of individual nutrients in the form of vitamins and other supplements into these supplements that people take, where they're not coming packaged with the synergistic effects that come with the fiber and all the other phytochemicals and the very specific ratio of nutrients that are all brought together inside of whole foods that make sure that not only do we get what we need, but it prevents us from getting more than we need. And when we supplement, this has been very well documented with supplements like vitamin E. Vitamin E is a well-known antioxidant. And so in the past, they did scientific trials and studies where they gave people vitamin E supplements thinking it would improve their health. What did it do? It did the opposite. When we take concentrated amounts of these isolated nutrients, we can actually do more damage than good. And so one nutrient of concern, specifically on a vegan diet, is vitamin B12. In the past, when we used to drink, natural spring water straight out of a stream, and we used to eat our produce straight out of the ground when it still had a bunch of dirt on it, vitamin B12 is synthesized and produced by bacteria in our soil. And so before our world was so clean and hygienic and sanitized, we used to be able to get vitamin B12 naturally from eating dirty produce and drinking water that hadn't been chlorinated, and sanitized. But we don't live in that world anymore. And so we're not getting vitamin B12, by eating enough of the dirt that it comes in. And so that's something that's super necessary that we supplement on a vegan diet, and or make sure that we're regularly consuming on a daily basis foods that have been fortified with vitamin B12. I don't eat any fortified foods because I tend to just go straight for the whole plant foods as we find them in nature. And so I make sure to take a reliable vitamin B12 supplement on a regular basis.
Well, thank you so very much, Gabriel, for those informative answers. I loved having you on the show. I need to have you back because I have questions, man. I got lots of questions.
And I have lots of answers, or at least I'll try to share good information.
Thank you so very much for being on the show. Bye-bye. Thank you for joining us on another episode of the Vegan Pulse. I am your host, Nancy Arenas. Follow us on Facebook, check out our blog, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Remember, if you have a pulse, you have a purpose. Live vegan.